Hello friends, welcome to Banking Frontiers. We are organizing a panel discussion on a very important topic today, which is data liquidity, and we're looking at it what we can expect to see in 2021 as we start the new year. Now, liquidity is a very interesting topic by itself. You've heard of cash liquidity and how it helps the growth of the economy and how it makes commerce easier and smoother. But even beyond that, we have liquidity of metals. For example, to make iron, we need to melt iron ore. How do we get water? We get it when snow melts. We've all heard of liquid gold, and liquid gold is nothing but oil, which we use to give energy to most of our cars, buses, planes, trains, etc., and our engines and all kinds of things. And if I may stretch it a little further, I would say that electrons, that electricity is nothing but liquid electrons. So if you can see from these examples, liquidity has a huge role to play in nature, in the economy, and in the business lives that we live in. So today we're going to try to discuss data liquidity and how it can empower us, empower the business, empower our customers, and also what is the potential for this as we go ahead further into 2021, keeping in mind that the digital transformation that has been started in the economy and particularly in the financial sector. So with this introduction, I will first introduce myself and then I will request my fellow panelists to introduce themselves. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm the group editor and the founding editor at Banking Frontiers magazine, which we started in 2002. And it's a pleasure to keep bringing out the magazine and to organize interactive panel discussions like this, where people can share with each other their insights and create value for everyone. So that's about me. Let me now ask my panelists. Let me start with Biju. If you can give a very brief introduction to yourself.
Thank you, Manoj. I am Biju. I am the CISO for Federal Bank, and I am handling the information security for the last 7 years. I also have experience in other IT-related areas. I also am keen to hear from my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Biju. Wonderful to have you and good to know your background as well. Mr. Prakash, can we have your introduction?
Thank you. I am Prakash Takle from Satara DCCB Bank. I am heading CBS project entirely since inception.
Fantastic. Welcome, Prakash.
Yeah, thank you.
Praveen, can we have your introduction?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Praveen Gade. I work for Samunnati Financial Intermediation and Advisory Services. So I had a division called NEO, which essentially performs digital transformation for farmer producer organizations and small farmers. So that's what my team does. And I have been in IT sector for I come from a complete technology background.
Okay.
Been in IT sector for the past 16 years, worked for companies like IBM, worked at their headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, I served in the Indian Air Force for about 10 years.
Okay.
Come with some financial sector experience in IBM because we were doing their worldwide consolidation of finances, something interest here. But then in Samunnati, being a financial company, I come with some learnings from the past 1 year in Samunnati. But then mostly what I do is with regards to FPOs and farms.
Okay, I think that sounds like a very interesting topic. The farm sector is something that is really crucial to our economy and is also occupying headlines for a different reason. But anyway, let's go ahead. Yogesh, can we have your introduction?
Thank you, Manoj. Good afternoon to everyone. Myself, Yogesh Valansur. I am actually a board member of Dombivli Nagari Sahakari Bank. It's a cooperative bank situated in Dombivli, suburb of Mumbai. I'm in IT industry for past more than 22 years. Professionally, I have my own company in the field of cybersecurity. But as a board member of Dombivli Nagari Sahkari Bank, I'm responsible for executing whatever IT framework we have set up and ensure RBI compliance as requested. Thank you.
Great, great. I'm also happy to see that we have people representing a variety of organizations, Cooperative Bank, DCCB, NS, NBFC, and a bank. My final co-panelist, Tarun, can we have your introduction?
Manoj, hello everyone. My name is Tarun Chatterjee. I work as a part of the data management team at Oracle. So we look at how do we help customers run digital transformation on-premise, hybrid, and on the cloud. And so I have been working across industries, and of course, the financial sector being one of our prime industry where we focus on. So that's my background.
Fantastic. Good to have you, Tarun. I can just think that Oracle, being one of the pioneers, share one example of improvement in data liquidity in your own organization in the recent past. Something that is of value to others. Please don't say something generic. If there's something insightful, please share that with everyone. Who would like to begin?
Since technology and communication is developed or in advanced stage, it is getting more and more changes in our data system. That data once captured, which will be used further, we need not reiterate for capturing the data. And in such scenario, the CBS is the good example of the data liquidity. As like CBS, our MIS data, then eKYC, CKYC, PFMS, these are also other aspects which use the data liquidity. In our CBS, we are using mobile banking, for which mobile number it is derived from CBS data. That is one example. And for external use, our government of Maharashtra has introduced land record scheme. That 712 extract is downloaded from their site directly by the bank. That is also, yes, that is a unique feature. At present, we are using that one.
Fantastic, fantastic. Praveen, some insights from your perspective and from the farmer organization, maybe.
Sure. Most importantly, these are on the topmost resources, right? Time, money, human resources, but then data comes equally important. Because if you want to build an intelligent company, you really need to make sure that you have a good data strategy. You really need to make sure the information is coming in a timely manner, actionable manner. So we all know.
Okay.
So if you look at what we do, there are definitely multiple examples I can give, but I will dwell on one aspect. It's not only between the units, but also across the ecosystem. We work as a ecosystem player. So there are multiple value creators. In our case, we work for small farmers, I told you. So we try to make technology work for small farmers. So the government has the farm records.
Okay.
Right? There are a lot of analytics companies which do monitoring and then they create a lot of analytics. But then we specialize in delivering of information.
Okay.
So now all these three give that information in a timely manner to the small farmer, nothing like it.
Yeah.
So that's one example I would say where liquidity is very important. And for that to happen, you need to understand who your customer is, who your farmer or the small farmer, who is beneficial. So likewise, unless there is a seamless flow of this information and a delivery mechanism in place, that's just an example. I just thought I'll mention that. And multiple is coming together, making sure the liquidity is happening in a time.
Okay, that's interesting. I think for farmers to be part of the dynamic economy, they really need a lot of information in a timely manner. No doubt about that. Great. Let's hear from Biju. You're a national bank. What is the data liquidity perspectives there?
Yeah, basically when we speak about data liquidity and from a banking perspective, it would be hovering around CBS. And like Mr. Prakash mentioned, I would also like to quote based on the CBS, because for a financial institution, the core banking, which is a central database, will be the single source of truth. So what's most required is that even when a new customer is onboarded, whatever be the means, that customer ID, which is the primary identification point for a customer. So, and then thereafter allocation of an account number. So all those things are supposed to happen in an online fashion, so that even within a minute of the first transaction, be it a financial or non-financial, for the rest of the activities also, that is happening based on the initial account or the customer ID which is created. For example, currently everything is happening online. It's an era of open banking. So there can be various modes. A prospective customer can go to a branch. A field agent can approach a customer. So an opening or a creation of a relationship can happen in different manner. So whatever be the manner, everything is happening online, getting written to in a structured format in a common database, so that that data is thereafter used as the base for future transactions.
Right.
So that's one example which I can quote.
Okay, that's great. Yogesh, would you like to give one example from your organization's perspective?
Yeah, perhaps I would take. Yeah, I would take the same thread. Like a CBS is a central repository where every data, all customer coordinates, customer opening a saving data, it can be a prospect for all multiple other offerings of the bank. Okay, that we can definitely use. Most of the time we don't have a clue, and our marketing team, they depend typical on traditional approach of doing cold calling and all. But bank have, once the customer is onboarded, okay, that is a ground where you can extend your other offerings and make use of, which will be beneficial to customer. So if we give it a thought, like what could be his area of interest if a customer is onboarded. For example, a salaried customer could be, insurance could be interest of the, many banks are providing insurance services as well. So that kind of thought process based on the data which is available is required, and that we have started implementing. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Good. We have Mr. Venkateshwaran joining us. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the panel discussion. Can you just do a very brief introduction, and then I'll pose the same question to you.
Yeah, I am Venkateshwaran on this side, at present CISO. I have more than 23 years experience in IT, and I have been in charge of the data warehouse of Punjab National Bank in its formation years.
Okay. Fantastic.
See, data liquidity and data security, there is a balance. Okay. So first is the data consolidation. That is, in the core banking it happens, all the data get consolidated in the core banking. The examples of the data liquidity, one is others have told various things. In addition to this, one is from the credit perspective, we look into the registration of the assets in the CERSAI portals. Okay. So if a person takes a loan and we create a mortgage or a charge in the CERSAI portal, that asset ID is being used at various places. Similarly, now this CKYC is coming. The CKYC registration number is going to be important information for that can be accessed by various people for various further processing of their applications. Similarly, this director's identification number of the directors in the various companies. This is an important information that needs to be captured in the core banking, and this helps in various other activities. Thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think all of you are talking a similar concept, that data has to be captured and data has to be put into some kind of central system. And I guess it's core banking system, at least in the banks, from where it goes to various consumers of data. So may I ask Tarun then, Tarun, what kind of new capabilities are core banking systems developing? And what new kinds of data are they working on? Are they accepting? How are they creating value out of this? Some thoughts on this from you?
Sure, Manoj. I think from an industry standpoint, Manoj, we see from a traditional, core banking and data warehouse led initiatives, right? So the data is the core banking. We create a data warehouse. We run analytics on top of data warehouse, and core banking being the single source of truth. Now, increasingly, we are seeing trends around adding a social element of it. So am I able to tap into some of the social data of my customers? Am I able to tap onto a spend analysis of the customers? Do I know the credit card spend pattern of a customer and come up with an application to say, do you want to cross-sell or upsell using some of the products that a financial institution has? Right?
Okay.
So we are seeing a lot of analytics-driven initiatives around data, right? So be it data in the warehouse, be it data in the core banking, adding social element to it, and so on. So that's a traditional thing. What we're also seeing, Manoj, are a lot of these fintech companies coming up, right? So they're traditionally not FSI sector or banks, right? But they leverage on their platform, be it a transportation platform they have built, right? Or be it a telco who has got extensive reach into their customer base and building financial products on top of it. So they have a captive audience, customer base, and for these customers or these evolutionary organizations, they tend to use a lot of these open source, cloud native tools and technologies to build the platform. So they may not have a core banking equivalent, but they have a customer master or a customer data store, which they use to mine data.
Okay.
So we are seeing two spectrum, one using the traditional customer assets, customer base they have, and other fintech organizations, they're coming up with their non-financial customer assets that they have to come up with financial products.
May I paraphrase what you're saying by kind of in this way, that traditional organizations, the focus is on data, whereas the fintechs seem to be focusing on liquidity to use the data more effectively.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think that's why these two sets of organizations are collaborating. One brings a lot of data and customer engagement. The other brings in a lot of liquidity and they create value.
That's correct.
So yeah, that's interesting. If I may ask a couple of people to, and not everyone, because we'll run out of time otherwise, but give us examples of extra liquidity that your business units are asking for. They're saying that, while we have the data, it's still coming in slow or takes a lot of time to process, or it takes a lot of time to transform from unstructured data to structured data or something. One or two examples of data liquidity that business units are asking the IT departments and the IT team in your organizations. Anyone? Yes, Venkatesh.
This data transformation, it has various stages. Okay. First will be we will be having the data, and we will be having some reports on the data, MIS and this thing. That is the first stage. So once they start using this MIS, then the demand will be that they want something more than the MIS. Okay. So that is the querying part. You will query, instead of this MIS reports, they will ask for some ad hoc data, which will be taken from the databases or the warehouse. Okay. That is the next stage. Then the next stage comes the data mining part. You have the data and you try to use some tools, analytical tools, to mine the data and you will come out with some unknown correlations between data, which will help you in focusing your products and services to based on this particular type of data. Okay, that is what this fintech companies and the other players like the retail marts, they are using that type of this thing. They use also some behavior pattern with the data, so that they will know that if a person buys a particular thing, he will be interested in buying the next thing, and they will project that particular thing. Okay.
Correct.
See, but for banks to reach, or the financial institutions to reach the stage, still it will take some more time.
Mhm.
Okay, because basically there are various regulations which are there, which will we have to look into those regulations also to move into those places. Okay. See,
Okay.
see, if you have if there's a customer who is having good resources, we can tap in for insurance and this thing, or some lifestyle financial services. Okay, those type of data, it is also there. What is happening is this fintech companies are there. They are using some particular data, but what we have been feeling is, yes, this data is important, this is good, this is useful, but there is also a fraud angle towards that. The same data is being used for various other purposes, which goes detrimental to the customers. So generally, the banks and financial institutions will be having a very cautious approach, keeping in view the guidelines and this thing, and in moving forward such this thing. Of course, we will be building the data warehouse, we will be going into the data lakes, all those things will be there. That is for various internal purposes and focused business decisions.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
But as regards marketing and this thing, it is still a long way to go as regards the banks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I request one other person to talk about, let's say, the external data that people want from the outside world to make a business use within the organization? Any examples of that?
The increased need for data liquidity, in an example I would like to quote is that the requirement is much more when we look from in a banking perspective regarding personal banking or say retail banking. So for example, like if it is a regarding a loan product, say the retail team wants to know very quickly or even instantaneously where a customer needs a loan and where a customer needs an EMI, whether that needs to be converted into an EMI. All these things now needs to happen on the fly. For example, we all know the customer may be at a shop doing a transaction, maybe a transaction costing 50,000, or it may be a 1 lakh rupee transaction. So whether that customer is eligible, whether it can be converted to an EMI, all those things the retail team wants to know on the fly. So all those things can happen only if the liquidity is there.
Correct. Very good example, I think. And that's what is happening today.
Yeah.
That is driving a whole lot of growth in retail credit.
Yeah,
This
that's
kind
the
of
need of the hour now.
Yes, yes. Instant loan. Great. Good examples. Thank you, all of you. Let's move on to the next question. We talked about the management consuming data. Let's also look at it from the employee's point of view. What kind of data liquidity are employees wanting, particularly in this work from home scenario, where a large number of employees were forced to work out home and even today continue to prefer to work from home. And many organizations are also comfortable with that. So how do you see data liquidity for employees working from home or working from anywhere? Can we hear from Yogesh and Praveen on this angle?
Yes, definitely. Especially during this pandemic scenario, the marketing team, okay, where now it's little free, but a few last few months there were a lot of restrictions on the movement and physical movement, of course. So how the marketing team should go to market? So that was primarily dependent on what kind of data that have. And thankfully, in our case, in our bank, that problem got solved by our IT and operations department. For example, they what kind of EMI transactions are there in my accounts. For
Mhm.
example, I'm getting 500 customers who are paying EMI from my bank account when they have loan for with some other external entity. Okay, so that kind of data, the if the IT department gives that data to the marketing department, that are the leads. Okay, so sitting at his home on that laptops, he can very well connect to them, send an email to them, send a brochure or one pager, and generate leads out of them. So he in other traditional case, he would have to go on actual foot on street and go and campaign for those loan products. But primarily with this data, he can sit at home and still canvas for those loan products and get very well leads out of it.
Correct. I think that's a very good example because the movement restrictions make that data liquidity more important. So we have to proceed and do something meaningful. And Praveen, any example from your organization or from your sector as such?
So going beyond the lead, the next step is again once in the pre-pandemic state, they were actually reaching the doorstep. They would learn in the process because they are already in the field. They have many sources of information, right? But today, reaching a customer, they want to know a lot, whole big deal of information about the customer. They want to know that customer's behavior, practices, all those things. So definitely in this times, all the field people are definitely asking for a lot more information. And then even from a collection standpoint, how to really reduce this, right? What are the chances that this guy will not pay and all? Especially with the pandemic scenario, what kind of payment with all the uh, 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 situations that are prevailing, what are my chances that I'm going to get my money back? So definitely, a lot of questions are being raised.
Do these, so do they ask for more reports or are the people on the field asking for more real-time alerts or something like that?
Everything. So even I'll give you another example. Prices, for example. What
Okay.
price do I quote for a particular transaction? What is the best price that I can give this farmer? If
Hmm.
I'm doing a market linkage, what is the prevailing price? And in this pandemic situation, it's very tough to get that information, right? So demands are there. Demands are there. Now, how you meet those demands is a very big question. Uh, Liquidity for data is always needed, right? So
Okay. Okay.
lots of demands.
So that brings me to my next question. But before I come to that, Tarun, what is the Oracle's experience with its other financial customers? What kind of issues did work from home create? And did your applications, Oracle's various applications, did they have to be tweaked or was a system tweak required or an applications tweak required or both? What was more critical?
Right, Manoj. So it's a very important question. It's a very interesting question. Okay. Um, as the pandemic hit, I think the first and foremost thing that a lot of our uh, customers, prospects, or rather industries started to ask is our additional help around how do we go around the hump, right? So what it means is that is there something from a technology that Oracle can provide and help, right? So these could be things like I want to have additional, and the point that you brought about was are these real-time statistics, information, reports that are required, right? What are the data elements that are required for having to help business tide over it? So we got a lot of requests around tools around how do we build low code, no code development tools around building new apps, right? And these could be apps that are built for across multiple channels, right? So mobile apps, chatbots. So we saw a lot of uptake of chatbots where information dissemination becomes critical, right? And so we help build a lot of these chatbots, low code, no code development codes. Um, Interestingly, we also worked on linking a lot of the financial institutions with healthcare sector. So we saw a lot of uptakes around insurance organizations asking us information about these chatbots so they can come up with schemes to help people around. Right? And these are data that were related, and going back to the data liquidity part, these were information on real-time basis of healthcare sectors to see what are hotspots, the COVID hotspots, and how we can link it back quickly to the insurance agencies to roll it out for them. Right? So there were data engineering projects that came about. Right?
Okay.
So,
okay.
Quite interesting work that we have done at all.
That's interesting. And my question then to panelists is, do you have something to respond to what Tarun has just said? In your organizations, are you deploying, is the usage of chatbots, for example, going up, or you upgraded did you just upgrade your existing applications, or did you actually develop new applications, whether low code or more code or whatever it is, whatever approach was used? How was data liquidity handled at that application level, optimizing versus adding new things? Maybe Biju can share something.
Yeah, thanks,
And then
Manoj.
Venkateshwar.
That is a good question. And really, I think all institutions, not only banks, almost every institution will be looking at AI tools, robotic process automation, etc. And all these are areas where the data liquidity is very much essential. Rightly, Tarun mentioned about that point. It's not only for monotonous activities; it is also for enhancing the customer experience. Now, for example, the customer is using a self-service platform, whether it is a mobile banking or an internet banking. The various customers can face multiple issues. So earlier, the support measure was like customer either raising an email or calling the contact center of the bank. So currently, these issues are supposed to be handled on a real-time basis itself, so that the experience of the customer remains at a higher level itself. So for that also, the data liquidity is very much important. So there are tools, analytical tools, which analyzes what went wrong and can come back with a response as quickly as possible to facilitate the customer. So this data liquidity is very much important in all these aspects. It is not only for upsell, cross-sell.
Okay, great.
Thank
So Venkateshwaran, you were saying something.
See, during pandemic, the availability of people was one of the concerns in various organizations. Here, what we have seen is there has been certain push towards this robotic process automation, wherein the standard repetitive tasks can be automated, and there is no need for all these reports and all can be scheduled. Okay, and there is no need for manual intervention, and the robot can automatically start an activity at a particular point of time as per the schedule, and it can continue to work. There are certain areas like reconciliation and all. There has been certain push towards these technologies and usage during this pandemic situation. The other one is the online transactions have grown rapidly.
Okay, great. And in the cooperative banks, what is the approach? New applications or modernization of existing applications? Yes, Yogesh.
Yeah, of course. Primarily, there are two things like on first hand, cooperative banks have to be at par with all other private, commercial, and PSU banks. And second, on the second hand, RBI has come up with a lot of regulations. So on both these parts, we have to deal with. So primarily, the approach has been, as earlier one of my panelists mentioned about low-code, no-code platform, because your go-to-market has to be very crispy and quick. For example, this fast tech kind of option where early bird will have a better market share. So the team or the approach has to be fast go-to-market, and in this approach, I think the data liquidity, this kind of mindset will have a better role to play, and that will make the things very easy for us.
Okay, okay. And Praveen do NBFCs. What do you see the development there from this angle, applications?
Again, even within NBFCs, customer experience, like you mentioned earlier, it becomes very important to make the data available for the customers at the right time.
Hmm.
So chatbots requirements are definitely, lots of chatbots are there, like WhatsApp Business API,
Okay.
right? So that kind of automated systems are definitely being, like, a lot of demand all across. Every bank is doing that today. So we are too, MBS is. And then other than that, like I mentioned, they need a lot of information from the market. So I come from both banking and agro. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good actually.
Yeah, even in agro, they need to know prices information. From an agri standpoint, they need to know weather information. Lot of things. They want interaction. So if it's a human interaction, action, nothing like that. But at least if they have something, uh, uh, even when there is a human is absent there, if they a system can help them, why not? So robotic process automation, yes, a lot of demand is there for robotic process automation. Financial analysis, a lot of financial analysis happens in these institutions, right?
Okay.
So how well you just throw some financial documents into the system and it gives you a very crisp analytics, right? So a lot of demand everywhere. So I would say yes. All these technologies are very much pertinent today. They're
Okay.
very accessible. So organizations are very adopting at a very fast pace.
Okay. Okay. So Tarun, two, three of our panelists have talked about robotic process automation. Perhaps it is going to play an increasing role in data liquidity. Uh, can you give us like an overview uh, based on what your organization is doing, or based on what your customers in the financial space everywhere are doing, leveraging RPA robotics?
Right. So I think there are two aspects to this, right? The first aspect to it is uh, we are seeing a lot of uptakes, as Mr. Venkateshwaran mentioned, right? So there's a lot of uptakes around how do we use data and data liquidity to come to a stage where we can implement RPA way better than just a process initiative or a process automation, right? So we are seeing a lot of projects around how we can have a better data management. When I say data management, around how quickly can I get my data integrated, data being made available, data cleansed, and a lot of machine learning. And I say lots and lots of machine learning projects being implemented to make sure that it is available with a good amount of analytics or mining being built. The second aspect to it is to now productionize at scale using some of the technologies around RP. So there are two elements of it: a data pipeline, if I may use the word, a data pipeline being created to a stage where I am okay and ready right now to run the RPA process
Mm-hmm.
and productionize it. Right? So these are two key things. And so at Oracle, we have also started to see a lot of uptakes, as I said, on not only the traditional on-premise deployment, but also in hybrid and the cloud world, where all these constructs can be implemented faster. Having a nimble infrastructure on-premise, I'm still going to go ahead and create a small cloud-based deployment, play around with it, I'm good to go, and then productionize it. So we're seeing a lot of uptakes around hybrid and public cloud intakes.
Okay, thank you. Since you mentioned cloud, one thing definitely the cloud promises, apart from all the technical benefits, there's also a promise of financial benefits, that it is low cost and scales up and down, so you don't unnecessarily pay a huge capex. You can have more of an opex approach. So my question to then my BFSI panelist is, when it comes to liquidity, improving data liquidity, do you see it more like a capex, or more, or would you like it more to be an opex? And so one is to provide the liquidity, another is to protect that liquidity, the data. whether it is from data privacy perspective or data theft perspective or data loss perspective? Do you see more of a CapEx approach or an OpEx approach? What makes sense in what use case? Any thoughts on this? Mr. Venkateshwaran, you're a CISO. Maybe you can start.
Yes. It will be a combination of CapEx and OpEx. Okay. See, certain services are available only in cloud. Okay. So we have to adopt that. But as regards the customer data, we will always be preferring to be on premise as long as the government guidelines doesn't change. Okay.
Okay.
There are various restrictions in keeping the data on cloud, and still this the structure is getting evolved. Okay, to protect the data in the cloud.
Okay.
There are see, what we have seen is still the confidence level has to go up for the financial institutions to adopt cloud, public cloud, as a full to fully utilize that. At present, yes, we are adopting cloud for certain non-customer the information, okay, or the queries or the chatbots. Like that, we are using it, and we are also getting the resources as regards the cyber security services. Many things we are getting it from the cloud.
Okay.
So it will still take some time, and the data protection bill, it will throw some focus towards this for adoption.
And would it be right to say that your cloud applications are more in OpEx mode and in that sense more cost effective?
No, see, it is too early to judge that. Okay. It's too early to judge whether it is cost effective.
Okay. If I may ask Praveen, if you talk about the financial and agro industry interface, do you see cloud being effective there? Perhaps a lot of farmers and traders use mobiles rather than desktop computers and laptops. Does cloud help there? And for your kind of organization, is it more cost effective in general to provide data liquidity via cloud as compared to via in-house on-prem solutions?
So, like I said, agriculture is specifically this sector. You can only see that as long as you work as an ecosystem player, that's when you thrive.
Okay.
And, data exchange, liquidity aspects, these are definitely enabled by the cloud. Be it at the convergence of agriculture and finance. So a lot of financial institutions, not just our financial institutions, a lot of other financial institutions also want to work with FPOs. So yes, this exchange of data is possible through such cloud-hosted systems. Of course, with all regulations met and all the data privacy aspects taken care. Coming to the cost aspect, what I would say is the desire is to have more hybrid approach. Definitely, this financial FinOps is something that is developing. So taking that approach, actually that discipline helps balance between the CapEx OpEx models there. Finding out, okay, which company is giving me cheaper computing versus which company is giving me cheaper storage, so on and so forth. But that should not happen at the cost of liquidity.
Right. Okay. Great. We're at 3:50 now. Let's try to come to a close in another 10 minutes. So my next question is this, that during the pandemic, the number of cyber attacks has gone up tremendously. And there are all kinds of reports that point out to that, all kinds of studies. So obviously, the cost of protecting all this data is also going to grow up. And I see data protection in 3 different layers. One is the systems layer, the other is the applications layer, and third is the people layer. So there are two questions then. How are you synergizing all these three layers? For example, you put a lot of effort in the applications layer, but your people's layer is weak, then you lose the advantage. So there needs to be some kind of synergy across all three layers: systems, applications, and people. And then you can't keep spending money indefinitely just because the threats are going up. So how are you optimizing? And IT is supposed to do everything at a lower cost. So cyber security should also happen at a lower cost, right? That is like common sense. What is your approach towards that? The synchronization and reducing the overall cost. And like everyone to briefly respond to this. I think Prakash hasn't spoken for a while. Maybe Prakash can start.
As regards system, application, and people, we can spend on system and application. That cost is naturally increasing. Every day, everybody is coming with a new solution that this is solution for cyber security, and it is going to add a cost to the organization. That is one thing. Another thing is that for people, we have to make them aware of the threats. That is the only thing in our hand. The rest of the things are taken care by system. As like mobile banking application, we are putting many validations. But for people, those who are using that one, they are aware of the threats, then only they will act accordingly. Now, so many things are happening that people are exchanging their passwords or PIN numbers and frauds are happening. In such scenario, though bank has incurred the cost at any point of time, it is not limited. That will go beyond bank's reach also. Yes. That's why bank has to decide to some certain points that we will restrict this one by this way only. Okay. Bank has applied some sort of tools for restrictions. That is the only thing in the hands of bank. After all, it is costing to the bottom line of the bank.
It is, right.
Yeah.
Great. Who wants to speak next on this topic? Yogesh, please.
Yeah. So there are three pillars for the organization: people, process, and technology. So actually, we have to build a thought process, and I think security measures or security should be imbibed as a culture in the organization on these three pillars. Okay. So because the time has come up where security should be a culture of the organization. Okay, and if we properly focus on these pillars like people, process, and technology, and implement the proper culture at each level, I think it is manageable to a great extent. Especially during the pandemic, I think we should not say thanks to pandemic, but definitely some points have come up or explored during the pandemic, which has given or which has triggered this thought process that many of the things are manageable. Like before the pandemic, work from home was a very reluctance from either side. But nowadays it has been accepted and we have come up with some positives also. So like this, we'll have to work out, explore, and then form a policy which will be in compliance with the organization's goal.
Yogesh, interesting point about culture, bringing culture as a key part of the organization. But culture applies to people. Can you apply culture to process and technology? How do you do that?
Yes. Definitely in a different form. Like for example, if I were to go apply for a technology, as earlier it was mentioned, for a technology, what should be what is my roadmap? How I want to execute that roadmap? Like if I want to go the cloud way, what should be my cloud? What is my strategy for cloud? So that is that is the culture that we'll have to build. How I will execute or onboard an application, what kind of process that I'll follow. So the culture, the form may be different, but it will be a set of process that will form a culture, whether it is onboarding an application or adopting a new system, and at the end, training is I would say, a vital role in all those things that people needs to be trained as a regular activity, as we do a day end and day begin, like that, which is a mandatory in a banking system. Though we should make a weekly, fortnightly, monthly training, which has to be mandatory, and a next day can't be open without that. That kind of thought process will definitely give or make us complied with the coming challenges.
I agree, fully agree. Who wants to go next?
Mr. Yogesh has beautifully explained that. I fully agree with him. So basically, like, no, yeah, we all have to change with the changing times. So development has to become agile. While becoming agile, if the institution is adhering to the standards set, now certainly the time to market, the number of man hours to be additionally spent for resolving vulnerabilities, all those things can be avoided there itself. Similarly, when we come to training or awareness, there is a need for increased training. However, by using latest technologies, like, now we are doing this meeting in an online fashion. Similarly, all the trainings are now happening online, so the cost is very much reduced without any compromise on the number of trainings or the quality of trainings. In fact, the number of trainings is now going up. So
Yes.
while maintaining the cost, we have to improve security so that the organization is protected against the increased threats, whether it is due to COVID or even otherwise. So that is my point.
I like the point that you mentioned, that during the development phase itself.
Yeah, that is
means
very much
we're tackling the problem at the beginning rather than
Yes.
halfway or towards the end.
Yeah, there is a double advantage. Like, the time needed for launching a new product, that is a time to market, is very much reduced. Then by additionally working on the again coding, again recoding, again testing, all the cycles, the iterations, multiple iterations needs to happen. So all those things we can avoid. Everything will result in reducing the cost, whether it is
Correct.
which is an OPEX thing.
Right. A very good point. Very good point. Who wants to go next?
Investments in the security in the financial sector in India is mostly driven by the regulatory requirements. There is a cyber security framework, there is a Global Krishna Committee recommendations, and most of these investments have been focused around because of these listings. It is the responsibility of the bank is how well they implement it and how they optimize the cost in respect of these securities. One more challenging thing which is happening is that the software solution providers are moving into security. The security solution providers are moving into network. So this flux is happening in the software and the infrastructure part, and there is a possibility that there may be redundant security solutions which are there or which are getting implemented in the banks. We need to focus towards rationalizing this in the next few years, so that we optimize the costs. Thank you.
Yes, that is a good approach. Confirm. I'm actually happy to see that so many vendors of non-security solutions, whether it's an operating system, whether it's a network, whether it's a whatever, they're building security into the solution to some level. So which makes the whole system fundamentally more secure, grounds up, rather than adding one more layer of security on the top. I think that's a good approach. I think I would like to hear from Oracle also on this. But first we have Praveen, I think. Praveen wants to say something, right?
Sure. So talking of security as a culture, back from my Air Force days, security is not your responsibility, not my responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. Right? So unless that is injected into the culture of the company, customer data is very important. Right? We have a big responsibility when it comes to data. So unless that is really imbibed within the culture of the company, we'll keep seeing Wells Fargo's and all these, whatever we have seen in the last 1.5 years. That said, one thing I just wanted to mention is there are new tools, new techniques. You have to be open to adopt those, but the approach has to be old school.
Be secure upfront. Okay, got it.
So the approach has to be old school, where you are keeping all those control points in place, making your assets are protected well. So use the new tools, but have the old school approach. That's when the best outcomes are achieved.
I think that's a
That's
very good and a very simplified way to visualize the approach overall. I like that. Thank you so much. So I think that leaves Tarun. Can you give us an overall perspective how to make security more manageable and more affordable?
Sure, Manoj. So I think as Praveen mentioned, right? So we start with what we call a zero trust. I do not trust anybody. And from a zero trust process, I think then we go in, all aspects of security, right? Whether we talk about network security, which statistically the bulk of the investment from a security standpoint gets into network security, and then application security, which as Biju mentioned, should be bolted on as a part of my app dev process, right? But at Oracle, what we also have realized is there are quite a few gaps when it comes to data security, because bulk of the investment happens at the network security layer, and then comes to application. Whereas when it comes to data security, it's not about just encrypting the data, right? It's a complete life cycle of data being managed, right? So data being encrypted is one aspect of it. What happens to the backup? What happens to the data being stored? Is it secured? Can it be restored? Can it be recovered quickly in case of a, let's say, a ransomware attack, and so on and so forth, right? So at Oracle, the entire aspects of data also is as important as a security aspect of data is as important as how we manage the application code securely or a network security for that matter. And so there's a lot of emphasis that are built into our products where security is bolted on, which should rightly be the approach. From a process standpoint, we see, and we always advocate segregation of duties, right? So not one person should have access to the entire data vault sets of let's say core banking, right? So there should be segregation of duties from a role standpoint, could be from people standpoint, who've got access to sensitive information, PII information. Look at the entire gamut of data security, backup and recovery being a key aspect of data security.
One of our panelists mentioned, I think Mr. Venkateshwar, that security, there's a huge role of compliance within security. How does Oracle help look at aiding banks and financial organizations in compliance also?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of reports and this kind of things have to be generated, audits have to be done.
Correct. So there are there are tools that are available to run compliance baselines, right? So these could be simple baselines like CIS, and I'm using simple in the sense that's becoming a de facto standard for that matter. Or we see a lot of requirements around GDPR, right? The EU regulations coming in for financial institutions who work across continents, right? So we see a lot of these requirements around GDPR regulations, right? And then you have a lot of these PDPA regulations that are across multiple countries, right? So we have come up with tools, or there are tools available where we can start with baselining these compliance requirements, look at where these gaps are these people, process, or technology gaps, and then how can we use these tools and technologies to reduce the gap to a point where we are in compliant to these regulations.
Okay. Great, thank you. So we are at 4:05. Does anyone want to make any last closing remarks? Something that we have not covered in this discussion, but is of deep interest to you?
Yeah, I think just one point, Manoj, I want to highlight, and a very good point that Mr. Venkateshwaran brought about was that while a lot of the work is done on the cloud, there are some aspects which should remain on premise, and primarily because of compliance requirements, data privacy, sovereignty requirements and so on, right?
Yes.
And we are increasingly seeing these requirements. So at Oracle, what we also have done is we have brought the cloud to the data center, to the customer's data center, right? So a lot of the tenants around cloud can be deployed, especially at the data tier, can be deployed at customers on premise behind a firewall, right? So this takes away a lot of the questions around sovereignty, data security, and privacy and policies around it. So we are increasingly seeing the traction where the hybrid approach becomes important and critical, right? Where we bring the cloud tenants of, as you mentioned at the start of the session, on the ability to scale up and scale down as one of the levers in the cloud. So bring those aspects of the levers of the cloud to the data center on premise. So we are seeing increasing trends around that. And at Oracle, we have solutions around the data platform and the data management gamuts that can operate on similar nature.
That's great. That's great. Great. Thank you, Tarun. Any other closing remarks? Anyone? Maybe not. So let's conclude then. It's been a wonderful discussion. I think we have covered a lot of interesting points regarding the opportunity that data liquidity is throwing up, how customers and management and users are taking advantage of data liquidity to be more productive on the field or in making decisions or in serving customers, and how the whole thing can be protected and made secure, because data like gold is very prone to theft, and definitely it has to be protected. So I thank you all for a wonderful discussion, good insights.